This training is on disease, allergies, and medication, and this training will consist of some PowerPoint lecture here, and then a few readings to do on your own, and then some writing exercises as well. And it will count as 2 hours of training upon a successful completion of this. So Benjamin Franklin once said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this proverb is just really neat, I think, because it's very, very wise. If you take care of things in the beginning, if you can keep them from happening, if you can invest that time and maybe a little bit of money, then a lot of headache, a lot of energy, a lot of money is sure to be saved in the end. And so when we're talking about a child's health, this is an appropriate statement as well. If we can take care of things before they become real issues, it is going to save a lot of headache and aggravation and potential danger later on. When we're talking about infectious disease, a few things you need to know. First of all, no sick child can come into the center. If you know a child is sick when they show up, you cannot let them into the center. This is putting you, the teacher, at risk. This is also putting the other children, of course, at risk for disease. And we do not want to spread disease. If the child actually becomes sick at the center, because this happens, sometimes the child comes in and they're fine, and then they end up sick sometime during the day. So that does happen, and when it happens, the child needs to be isolated, which means they need to be taken out of the room that they're in and put somewhere else with supervision. They cannot be left by themselves. Anything that the child has touched that day, any chairs or tables, books, toys, bathrooms, sinks, any of that stuff that he has touched or she has handled during the day needs to be cleaned and disinfected. And then, of course, the parent or guardian needs to be notified and told that they need to come pick up their child. Now, one reason we don't want to let sick kids enter the center, of course, is because it may spread the disease. And when we're talking about the parents or the guardians having to come and pick up their child, we know that many of these parents are going to have to go without pay for some length of time, which is going to in turn affect home life, financial security, and things like this. So our first priority, of course, is the health and well-being of the child, but if we look a little bit further, we need to know that this actually can affect the entire family and their finances, and we want to prevent as much as we can, to the best of our ability. We want to prevent financial strain on the family as much as possible. One thing I do want to say here is that even though we say no sick child can enter the center, this does not is not intended to require the exclusion of children in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you do have a child that has a disability, this would not, of course, be considered an infectious disease, and we cannot and should not insist on or ask a child who does have a disability to stay out because of this disability. That is not what this policy is intended to do. Let's see here. Okay, so some signs of infectious disease. One is that the fever reaches 100.4. Now, we all know that the average temperature of a person is 98.6, and there's a little bit of variation in what is normal for each person, but it's a pretty much understood fact that, or understanding anyway, that anything of 100.4 or over constitutes a fever. There are times where we're feeling a little bit under the weather and our temperature may be a little bit elevated, and we cannot stop life, and we cannot ask families to stop life because a child has a temperature of 99 or something like that. But once they hit 100.4, they are considered contagious and need to be kept at home. Diarrhea, of course, is a sign of infectious disease. Vomiting, unexplained rash, Scabies or lice, indication of those, or the physician requiring the child to be separated from other kids. This list is not exhaustive. If there's something, a child in your center, if you really feel like a child in your center is sick and they do not have one of these symptoms here, go with your gut. Be smart with this. This is not an exhaustive list. All right, so again, parents need to be notified. And then we want to also encourage parents to tell the center when their child has been exposed to a contagious disease outside of the out of the center. So a lot of these kids probably have older siblings that may be in grade school. And if, the older child comes home from school and has got strep throat or has got the flu or has lice or something like that, even though the child himself may not be showing symptoms, may not ever come down with it, they may be considered a carrier, and we do want to have this knowledge that this person has been exposed so that we can take extra measures to protect the other children in the center. And then also so we can keep a better eye on this child, because if they have been exposed, the chances of them coming down with symptoms are increased. So we want to have this knowledge so that we can prevent something from becoming a bigger deal than it needs to be. Remember Ben Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So with prevention, as we just said, awareness is a big deal. If we know that a child has been exposed, then we can do a lot more to help keep those germs from spreading. Also, proper hand washing for children and adults is needed. Okay, which means using soap, running water, paper towels. This is a little chart here about how to wash hands. The first thing you do, of course, is you wet your hands. You turn on the sink and you let the water fall on your hands. You're going to use liquid soap then, and then rub your hands together for about 20 to 30 seconds, which when you're teaching the kids how to wash their hands, of course, you've all heard, get them to sing the ABCs or happy birthday twice or something like that. Don't forget to teach the kids to wash between fingers, under fingernails, and the tops of hands. We don't want to be, super weird about, being completely germ-free all the time. That's not good either, but we do want to get the very obvious, dangerous germs away. So after you rub your hands for 20 to 30 seconds here, we want you to rinse with water, get all that soap off. Use a paper towel to dry your hands, and with that paper towel, turn off the tap rather than using your hand that has been contaminated, that was contaminated when you turned on the sink. Turn it off at that point. And then throw away the paper towel. Let's get back to this one. Of course, we're going to use gloves for diapering all of the time, or helping with toileting or anything like this. Toiletry type articles need to be labeled, maintained, and stored separately. And toilet articles are things like toothbrushes or toothpaste or combs, things like that. Okay. Let's see here. You need to be washing your hands, of course, after you help with wiping noses. The child needs to wash their hands after they wipe noses. If you change a child's diaper, their hands need to be washed as well. Even babies, if they're able to hold their head, then you need to be putting their hands under the water and washing their hands the way you would wash your hands or an older child's hands. Baby wipes can only be used if the child is not able to support his head at that point. And a child needs to be symptom-free for 24 hours before returning to your center, to your daycare. All right, so immunizations. There are lots of diseases that we have forgotten about just because immunizations are effective, and they have kept a lot of these diseases at bay. Diphtheria, mumps, rotavirus, pneumococcal disease, whooping cough, measles, HIV, rubella, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, tetanus, polio. You've all probably heard of most of these before. Probably have not experienced them. Some of you may have experienced chickenpox, which is one that I did not list. This is a relatively new one. I, as a child, had chickenpox. My sister got it. 2 weeks later, I got it, and then 2 weeks later, my brother got it. we do have this natural immunization because we did have chickenpox. But since then, a vaccine has been developed, and so my 3 children have been protected from that. Rotavirus is a pretty new vaccine also. I think between my oldest child and my middle child, that one was developed. And so these are diseases that can potentially be fatal. My mom had mumps as a child. My mom had measles as a child, and of course we've heard about measles cases going bad very quickly. Polio is one that we hear about, but it's one that is not one that's common now. It's one we hear about when we think about people 70 or 80 years ago, and it was very crippling if it wasn't fatal. These can be very, very dangerous, and we do want to protect them or protect our kids. There are some myths about immunizations, and the big one that we hear about all the time is that certain vaccines cause autism. Okay, so the reason people think that is because there is a study published in 1997 by a guy named Andrew Wakefield, and he suggested that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine was increasing the rate of autism in British kids. But this entire study has been debunked because there were financial conflicts of interest, there were very serious procedural errors and ethical violations. This guy lost his medical license, but this hypothesis was taken very seriously. Other studies were done and indicate that there is no link between any vaccine and the likelihood of developing autism. So the true causes of autism, just incidentally now, are unknown, but there are but to discredit autism, I'm having a hard time saying this. There is no evidence to show that any vaccine causes autism. And there is some evidence that shows that autism develops in utero and after birth, before the child actually is receiving this MMR vaccine. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and scientific evidence showing that this was indeed a myth. There are people who, for different reasons, cannot have vaccines, and these people, that's fine. That is their decision. For some reasons, it's a religious decision. For some reasons, for some people, it actually there is medical reasons that the doctor does not want them to have vaccines. But there is this movement away from vaccines. But I do want to give you just a little information here. In 2010, California had about 9,000 cases of the whooping cough, which was more whooping cough than had ever been had since the 1940s. So there were 10 babies who were too young to have had the vaccine at that point that actually died because they contracted it from people who refused the vaccine. So for people who are not receiving vaccines for things, they need to consider the fact that they are putting other people who are at risk, higher risk, young people who cannot actually have the vaccine, people who are medically not able to have the vaccine, people who have compromised immune systems and cannot have the vaccine. They're putting these people at risk for becoming infected and even dying. Vaccinations are very, very important. Babies who are entering your center 2 months and older have got to have an immunization form on their file, or some type of certificate of exemption from the doctor, which is going to either be a medical exemption or a religious exemption. And these need to be looked at and updated frequently according to the expiration date. In the state of Alabama, it's what we call a blue card, and it's a chart that's got every single vaccination a child has had on it. All right, so when we're talking about administration of medicine, we need to talk about what medicine can be given. Okay, well, over-the-counter medicines and prescription medicines can be given. But No medicine can be given without a written signed authorization form from the child's parents or guardians. You cannot just say, oh, that child, fell and we can go put some Neosporin on them or something. That is not true. You have to have some type of written authorization from the parents on the required form. In the state of Alabama minimum standards, this is what the form looks like. I was not able to copy the whole thing on here because there was not enough room, but this is what the top part of that form looks like, and this is in your minimum standards handbook. On the form, the parents must write the time, the dosage, the storage, and then also specific instructions on how it's to be given. Both over-the-counter and prescriptions have to be in their original container, and the prescription has to have a pharmacy label or a physician's note. All over-the-counter drugs have to be labeled with the child's name and with directions of how to give it to the child. And then the guardian has to give the measuring device. If you have in your cabinet some measuring spoon or measuring cup from a child, from last year, that was using Dimetap or something like that, you can't go rinse it out and use it with the child this year who needs a dose of something else. You have to use the measuring the device that the parent gives you, that the guardian gives you. Medication can only be given by designated staff and has to be out of reach and locked in locked storage, inaccessible to children. Medicine is considered one of these keep out of reach items, okay, that is could be potentially a poison for a child if it's taken into the wrong hands. So you have to keep medication out of the reach of children and locked. Unused medicines have to be returned to parents when it's no longer needed. So if you have some leftover, eardrops or something like that, and the child's finished with their ear infection, those leftover eardrops have to go back to the parents when when they're not needed anymore. Everything has to be documented. The time and the date of all medicine dosages or procedures administered at the center have to be documented. Document. Everything you do with medicine, any type of medical care, has to be documented. Blanket authorizations are not acceptable. Okay, you cannot say, a parent cannot say, give my child whatever they need whenever they need it. There has to be written authorization for each drug specifically. And again, I'm going to say all medicine needs to be kept under lock and key, out of the reach of children. All right, so there are different ways of administering medicine. The one that we think of the most is oral, giving a child some type of medicine through their mouth, whether it is some type of liquid or syrup or pill or something like that. This is called oral medication. It's going to go in through the mouth, and there are different oral measuring devices like the dropper, syringe, dosing spoon, medicine cup. These are all examples of oral measuring devices that you have seen or have used. One thing I need to point out that you probably already know is not to use kitchen teaspoons. The teaspoons that you use when you're making chocolate chip cookies are not exactly the same, are not as precise as what you should be using with medicine. So do not run into the kitchen and grab a teaspoon out of the kitchen if you can't find the proper measuring device with the medicine. You've got topical medicine, and when we talk about topical medicine, we're talking about medicine that goes on top of something, like on top of the skin, on top of the eye, on top of the eardrum, something like that. So we're talking about skin creams and ointments, some type of patch, eye drops, eye ointments, ear drops. So like if a child has pink eye and he's been kept at home for a day or two, mom's been giving him his pink eye medicine and then sends him to school and you have to administer it, that would be considered a topical medicine. Same thing with ear drops. If a child has an ear infection and needs ear drops for pain, that would be considered a topical medicine. And then we also have inhaled medicines like nasal sprays and drops. Those are no fun, but necessary sometimes. Metered dose inhalers and nebulizers. I was in the classroom for 5 years, and I don't think we ever had anyone in my 5 years who needed some type of inhaled medicine at our, during our care, during the time they were in our care. But when you have a kid, 8 to 12 hours a day or something, this is a real possibility. And so you need to be familiar with how to use them, because errors errors do happen. Some common errors here: parent, guardian, teacher, director, whoever, giving the medicine more than once within a certain period. It could be that the adult themselves gives it twice, or maybe the mom gives it before the child gets to school and the director gives it directly after the child gets to school, or something like that. But for whatever reason, medicine is given twice. Taking the wrong medicine, taking the wrong dose, taking like maybe 1 tablespoon instead of 1 teaspoon, or having a dosage of a medicine. Those are all errors, and this is caused by sometimes bad communication between the parents or guardians and the healthcare professional, or the parents and guardians and the child care professional. So you need to be sure that you've got good communication. Another cause is not understanding the medication label or not understanding how to administer the medicine. So if you have any question at all, be sure that you ask the parents to clarify it. 7,000 kids per year roughly require ER visits just for medication problems, for overdoses or taking the wrong medicine or something like that. So the most errors occur with medicines like acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and those are more commonly referred to as like Tylenol or Advil or Motrin or something like that. And the reasons that problems happen with these in particular is because they're given frequently, for a myriad of reasons: headaches or backache or legs aches or muscle aches, pretty common things. And because they're given frequently, sometimes they're given too frequently. Another reason is because there are many different concentrations of these medicines. There's the infant concentration, there's the child liquid concentration, there's the chewable, there's the adult, swallow version of it. So there are a lot of different concentrations. So when you are administering, Tylenol or ibuprofen or anything, of course, like we've said, you need to make sure that you are reading the label, looking at that dosing chart, knowing what you're doing. Another reason this error can occur is a lot of times acetaminophen in particular is mixed with some type of cough and cold medicine. So like, mom may give the child or some type of cough and cold medicine before they leave home that helps with the cough and cold symptoms, but it also has that, Tylenol aspect in it. And then the kid gets to school and somebody at school gives them another dose of acetaminophen, which means they've doubled up on the acetaminophen, and that can be dangerous. That can cause some pretty, bad damage to the liver. So we need to remember the 5 rights here. Okay, the first right is make sure you have the right child. Make sure you have the right child for the medicine. Look at the name on the label and look at the child. If there's any question, and hopefully there shouldn't be any question, but if there's any question at all, get somebody to double check you. I know that for me, even though I may have known all the kids in my class, sometimes I would just fear that I was, reading something wrong. My mind can play tricks on me. Your mind can play tricks on you. Be sure that you have the right child with the right medication. If any question arises, check with another identifier, such as, birthday, and or another adult there. With the right medication, again, make sure you have the right medication to the right child. Make sure you actually have the right medication, and make sure that the medication is in the original labeled container and that the expiration date has not gone by already. Give them the right dose. Make sure that you don't give them 1 tablespoon instead of 1 teaspoon. Check the dose on the label and on the authorization form. Be sure you use the correct measuring device, and then check the measuring device carefully before you actually administer it. Of course, we want the child to have the medicine at the correct time. So check the permission form to match the time with the label. Look at the clock and note the time. The right time includes both the time and the date. Write it all down. Make sure that you have the date and the time written down. Document, document, document. And also the right route. Give the label check the label and authorization form to give medicine. Make sure you're giving the medicine the right way. You're not going to want to put, I don't know, if the child does have eardrops or something, you're going to want to make sure they go in the ear and not into the mouth. You want to make sure they're getting that medicine the right way. So we need to prepare the child. They need to know what's going on. They need to be comfortable with what's going on, and you need to know how to give the medicine. When we're dealing with the youngest of these children, the infants, you need to support the infant's head. You always need to support the young infant's head, and you're going to hold them upright. An infant seat may be used in this situation if needed. Probably holding the baby in your lap, giving them that physical affection is really going to be the better way. Keep the infant's arms and hands away from their face. If they hate the way the medicine's going to taste or don't want that squirter up their nose or something like that, they're going to swat at it. And babies are strong. They can accomplish a lot with those strong little arms when they're determined to. Gently press the chin to open the mouth. And do be sure that you rock the baby before and after to give them that physical affection that they need. They may hate getting their medicine. It may be a necessary evil, but let them know that you love them and that you're taking care of them. You're going to, for the little bitties, position the dropper or the syringe on one side of the mouth along the gum, and you're going to squirt very slowly to allow time to swallow, because remember, babies do swallow at different rates, and if the baby is hesitant to swallow because of the way it tastes, you want them to get it down, not spit it back up. Another thing I saw was give oral medication before feeding unless otherwise instructed. Again, just be very, very sure that you and the parents are on the same page as to what to do. Okay, so ask parents what techniques they use for the infants, for the toddlers, for the preschoolers. With toddlers, you're going to want to give them control over some aspect of this. Do they want to stand? Do they want to sit? Do they want to lay? But they have to take the medicine if it's something that the doctor or parent says, so they do not get veto power. We want to give them as much autonomy as we can, but sometimes you, as the adult, have to make the call. Don't lie to them and say it tastes like candy. That is a big no-no. Do not tell children that medicine is candy or tastes like candy. You may be honest with them and just tell them it does taste bad. Have some milk or water or juice or whatever ready for the child to drink afterwards. Use age-appropriate language to explain what you're doing. Maintain an attitude that you expect cooperation. You are the adult. You are the one in control of the situation, and you are getting to call the shots here. Then thank the child for the cooperation. Praise them. Let them know that you appreciate that they helped you out and they took the medicine. As they get a little bit older, they're going to be able to have the capacity to understand why they're taking medicine. And why medicine helps us to get better. So use this opportunity as you give medicine for a great little science lesson about time, about body parts, about health and illness, how to take care of ourselves, how we can keep from getting sick, how we can keep others from getting sick, where is this medicine going once it enters our body. This is a great time for socialization and for learning here. Provide books maybe about medication that are helpful to read with the child. Again, praise the child when they're finished. Check the label again. You should have checked it several times at this point, but one more time, check the label again to make sure you gave the right medicine to the right child. Return the medication to storage immediately. Don't ever leave the medication unattended. Don't leave the Tylenol or antibiotic on your desk while you turn your back and go rinse a measuring cup out. It always needs to be out of child's reach. You're going to want to, again, write everything down on the medication log, clean the measuring device, wash your hands, and then just kind of keep your eye on the children to make sure they don't have any side effects from taking this medicine. So the last major topic we're going to tackle right now is allergies, and I'm recording this in March of 2017, and the pollen is beginning to fall and the bees are beginning to come out, and we're beginning to deal with some seasonal allergens. So we're going to talk about the seasonal allergens, the outside type allergens, but also, of course, about the food allergies, which is a hot button topic because we're seeing more and more of these food allergies every day. And a food allergy is an adverse immune system reaction that occurs after exposure to a certain food. It's the result of your body's immune system overreacting to food proteins. And some of these reactions can be mild and some of them can be very, very serious. So symptoms can include more than one system. They can be respiratory, gastrointestinal, skin, cardiovascular, neurological. Person may have a hard time breathing. They may have, the hives. They may start, blanking out. They may start, their heart may start racing. Things like this. They may start, throwing up or upset stomach. Look for these symptoms. And the most severe symptom is a condition called anaphylaxis, and this is a severe life-threatening allergic reaction and should be considered an emergency immediately. Anaphylaxis is a severe life-threatening allergic reaction. People can die. People do die from anaphylaxis. So you've got to be careful and take care of this as soon as it happens. Food allergies affect up to 8% of children and infants. And the most common food allergens are milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, wheat, soy, fish, and shellfish. And the one that gets a whole lot of press these days are the tree nuts and peanuts. And I don't think that I had a year in the classroom where I didn't have some type of peanut allergy. Some very, very mild, others, much more serious. But these are real allergies, and they really can do a lot of damage if proper precautions are not taken. Other allergens include things like animal dander, pollen from grasses, trees, and weeds, and then insects like ants and bees. So what's happening here is the immune system mistakenly sees the pollen as a danger and releases antibodies that attack the allergens. So this then leads to a release of chemicals called histamines, and these histamines trigger runny nose, itchy eyes, and other symptoms. And we don't generally think of these things being as dangerous as food allergies, but they sometimes can be. I was babysitting a boy right after I graduated from high school in Germany, where I did not speak the language. He was a friend. His family I was friends with them in the United States, and they moved to Germany because they were in the military. And this little boy got stung by a bee and started having, some major reactions. And I was, without another adult, and it was very scary. Thankfully, the little girl remembered where her daddy's phone number was, and we were able to get help. But that could have gone very south very, very quickly. It was a very dangerous situation. And the reason that I didn't jump on it earlier than I did is because he had been stung before and had not had a reaction. Sometimes, the second and third and fourth exposure can be much worse than the initial one. We're going to watch a little video here on allergies, and I'm hoping I have the sound right. If I don't have the sound right, I'll pause the recording and go back and try to fix the sound and then come back into it.
Hey there. Good life, noggin. We are well into spring, and unfortunately that means there are a lot of people suffering from allergies, including me. I don't know, I'm an impatient. I'm not supposed to get allergies. They get running noses and are constantly sneezing, and hives start showing up on their bodies. Take it from me, this is not a good time of the year. So what causes these allergies to start up, and why does our body freak out when pollen is near? Let's find out. Like most things related to the body acting strangely, allergies are connected to the immune system. A normally functioning immune system involves the white blood cells producing antibodies. Typically, when a virus or bacteria enters your body for the first time, you can produce antibodies to fight it off. Since these antibodies are now in your body, if you were ever exposed to that foreign object again, your body will quickly respond, keeping you healthy. In fact, this is how vaccinations work. The disease-causing microbe in the shot is weakened, so it's easier to fight off than normal. And if you ever encounter the full-fledged microbe instead, your body will already have the necessary antibodies to respond to the danger. So the immune system is pretty cool to have around, however sometimes it messes up, and a perfect example of this is allergies. As much as I like to blame my allergic reactions to the neighbor's dog or the pollen in the air, they're not actually at fault. The real problem here is your immune system. The object that you're allergic to is called an allergen, and it's typically pretty harmless. However, if it enters your body, your immune system somehow thinks it's an invader. As of now, scientists aren't exactly sure why this happens, but it does. When the allergen reaches your body and your antibodies recognize it, specialized cells called mast cells are triggered. These cells come from your bone marrow and are located all throughout the body. When the mast cells burst open, they release chemicals that cause swelling. If the swelling is in your nasal passages, you might get a runny nose. And if that swelling is in your airways, you could have a hard time breathing. Fortunately for us allergy sufferers, many people claim that their allergic reactions get less severe with age. This is most likely due to our immune system's weakening and therefore it can't produce such strong responses. However, there are also cases where allergies get worse over time and you might even develop more as you age. Anyway, what are you allergic to? For me, it's pollen and bees. Teenage Blocko had the misfortune of getting stung in a field of flowers, and it was all downhill from there. Here's a photo. It's really embarrassing. As usual, I'll be answering a new question every Thursday, so ask anything you want to know in the comments or on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Blocko.
Alright, so that was a little video that hopefully gave you a little bit more of an understanding of allergies and...
Hey there.
Sorry. Let me come over here and try something else. Okay, there we go. Hopefully that gave you a little bit more of an understanding of seasonal type allergies. Just some more allergy symptoms here that you need to be aware of. Itching in the throat or mouth can be a very bad sign. Skin rashes, cramps, shortness of breath, swelling of the tongue or throat, not being able to get that air in is very, very dangerous. And then also blood pressure can drop, loss of consciousness, and then we've already talked about anaphylaxis. So we have another video here that is a little bit more kid-friendly. It may give you a slightly different understanding of allergies and would be a good one maybe to show the kids in your class. We try to discourage screen time. This is one that you might want to show if there is some type of allergy. Definitely it's one that I would consider sharing with parents. I think it's actually on the next slide. Sorry about that. Just some thoughts here before we go on to that video. One is we need to be sure that we are sensitive to the allergies, and it's not just necessarily the taking into the body of the allergies, but it can also be just the exposure. So avoid art, science experiments, and things like that with known allergies. So don't make peanut butter Play-Doh. As much as it pains me to say that because I love peanut butter so much. Do not make peanut butter Play-Doh. Do not make bird feeders with peanut butter. Avoid, I don't know, science experiments where you use eggs if you have an egg allergy in the classroom. Because there can be a transfer of bacteria, viruses, allergens from hands to food, from food to food, and from equipment and food surfaces to food. So be very, very careful, particularly if you have a severe allergy in your classroom. Hand washing is just very, very important. We talked about earlier, that's not just to get rid of germs, but also to get rid of allergens that may be on our hands. If a child does bring in a peanut butter sandwich and eats it for lunch or something like that, although I think we probably should be discouraging, peanut butter sandwiches in the daycare classroom, but if they do, they need to go and wash their hands well before they go and play with anything, particularly if there is someone with any type of peanut allergy in the classroom. All right, so here's this next video, and I'll see if I can get it started.
Hello there. Welcome to the desk of Dr. Smarty, a growing library of information dedicated to educating you and your family on the world of health and wellness. Oh, great. A question has just come in. Dear Dr. Smarty, I ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and my throat was itchy after. When I went to the doctor, she said I'm allergic to peanuts. What does that mean? Great question, Susie. To answer your question, let's first take a look at just what it means to have a food allergy. When eating certain foods makes you sick, it can mean you have an allergy to that kind of food. Your immune system is your body's army against germs that make you sick. Having an allergy means that your immune system has made a mistake and thinks a certain food is a germ. This means that when you eat a food that you are allergic to, Your immune system will attack it, causing an allergic reaction. People can have allergies to all sorts of things. Some of the most common allergies are to pollen, types of medicine, and pets. In the United States, 3 million kids have food allergies. The most are allergic to peanuts and other types of nuts. Having allergies isn't a scary thing, but it is a serious one. But not to worry. It's something you can live a perfectly normal, happy life with. You just have to pay special attention to the food you eat. When kids have peanut allergies, they cannot eat peanuts, or anything that is made with or from peanuts. If they do, they will have an allergic reaction. Each person's body is different, and so the kind of allergic reaction one person has may be different from another person. Some reactions happen right away. Others can take some time to show up. Some allergic reactions can cause rashes and hives, a feeling of your throat being tight, wheezing, coughing, tingling in your lips and throat, and sometimes tummy aches, vomiting, or diarrhea. The most serious kind of allergic reaction is called anaphylaxis. This happens when someone has a lot of allergic reactions at the same time. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you are eating at a friend's house or at a restaurant. You can simply ask, does this have peanuts in it? When you have a peanut allergy, your doctor will go over what you can do to keep yourself healthy. Your family, your doctor, and you will have a good plan for what you should do if you have an allergic reaction. Right now, there is no cure for allergies or a medicine that can make them go away forever. Some people have a peanut allergy their whole life, while others can outgrow them. The good news is that living with peanut allergies can be completely normal, and don't be sad if you can't eat your favorite food anymore. There are lots of delicious foods out there that do not have peanuts. The better news? Doctors and scientists are hopeful that one day we can have a cure or a way to stop allergies from ever happening. Do you have a question for Dr. Smarty? Leave us a comment, send us a
All right, so one of the things that video talks about is us developing plans with parents as to what to do in a situation. Of course, we need to have the medication authorization form, but for people with, or for children with very, very severe allergies, we need to be a little bit more, assertive in this. I don't know if that's the right word. And we need to have a plan actually written should there be an emergency. And this plan needs to include things like the names of the child, names of the doctor, names of the medication, names of the allergy, doses of what needs to be taken, of the EpiPen or the Benadryl or whatever, and methods of administration of medicines. And this should include specific symptoms that would indicate the need to administer medicines. So, do you need to be looking for, rash on the chest, or do you need to be looking for, a child with blurred vision or something like that? So you need to develop this plan with the parents. They need to be very specific in what to look for and what to do. And this is something that needs to be reviewed regularly. Hopefully you'll never have to use this plan. There's a good chance you never will have to use this plan, but you want to be prepared. A child's life could depend on it here. Just some general reminders here. Notify the parent if you suspect a surprise allergy. There are occasions where the family does not know that the child has an allergy. Okay, they may not have ever had a reaction when they've had strawberries before. They may have never had strawberries before at home to have a reaction. So if you notice that the child breaks out in hives or gets very flushed cheeks or something like that after something has been introduced to them, go ahead and let the parents know so that they can have it checked out, so they can be on guard and have it checked out. If there's been any type of accidental exposure, even if a reaction does not occur, let the parents know, because again, like we said, sometimes it takes, sometimes they're going to react, sometimes they're not going to react to something. Or sometimes there could be a delayed reaction. So if there has been an accidental exposure, don't try to cover it up. Go ahead and let the parents know so that they can, be on the lookout for dangerous symptoms. If there is any type of major allergic reaction, paramedics need to be called immediately when the epinephrine, when the EpiPen has been given. Okay, if you use the EpiPen, just know that you have to call the paramedics at that point. The EpiPen slows down the reaction long enough to get the person to the hospital so that correct medical treatment can be given. If there is a severe reaction or a severe allergy in the classroom, you need to tell all the parents, because, birthdays come around or Christmas parties come, or, 4th of July parties or St. Patrick's Day parties or Mardi Gras parties. Parents are always sending food in for different things, and you need to let them know that there is a specific type of allergy. Don't break the confidence of that family, of that child, but just let them know very generally that there is a severe peanut or tree nut allergy in your classroom. Always carry the child's plan if you go outside, if you go on a field trip. You need to always have that plan with you, so that if something happens, if you panic, because panic happens in high times of stress, you know what to do. You need to be sure that any other adult that works with the child is also very familiar with the plan and has a copy of it as well. If the child is driven home on some type of bus or van or something like that, the driver needs to have that plan and be familiar with what to do. If you have a substitute or a volunteer or something like that, they also need to be familiar with the plan. Probably you all do this if you do transport kids at all, but if you do provide transportation, you need to prohibit food when transporting kids. One, for choking reasons. If you're driving a kid around and they start choking, you obviously can't keep them self-driving and perform the Heimlich maneuver, but also because there could be, again, some accidental exposure to major allergens. Of course, avoid serving meals that may include a food allergy. That just goes without saying. And then review the procedure periodically. A couple more things that we need to talk about. One is, and this is something that I had never thought of before I had prepared for this, is that caregivers need to be aware of foods that may be called by a variety of names in the ingredient list. Like, for instance, a child that is allergic to milk may also be allergic to casein or caseinate or whey or lactogluten. They all come from milk product. And so you need to know some of these other terms. If a parent tells you that their child is allergic to milk, they probably will go ahead and give you the heads up on this, but just be aware that just because the ingredient list does not say milk or does not say peanut does not mean that there is no exposure in the production of that item. Okay, all children that have a history of anaphylaxis, and all kids with any type of nut or peanut or fish allergy, they have to have some type of epinephrine available all the time. Now, if they ever experience anaphylaxis for any reason, or if the doctor determines that they are allergic to peanuts or tree nuts or fish, and they will probably automatically prescribe epinephrine. But you need to know that if they do have those allergies, or if they have a history of anaphylaxis, that epinephrine does have to be available. And you need to be familiar with how to administer it should that come up. Now, this is the end of this PowerPoint here, and again, you'll have some readings and some assignments to do just to reinforce everything we've talked about here. I know that this is not the most exciting of trainings for y'all to listen to, or really for me to prepare, but it is important. This is information that needs to be reviewed because we are dealing with the health and well-being of children here, and our main priority is to keep these children alive. Our primary responsibility is to keep these children alive and healthy, and then everything else should fall into place pretty easily. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, or if I didn't cover something clearly, or you think I said something in error, please give me a call at 205-348-0682, or email me at kbrothers@ches.ua.edu. And this contact information is also going to be on the syllabus. All right, thank you.